Hi, this question is for Joe. As I was watching your presentation, you mentioned the first guy that you brought up about his testimony and how he had a pole stuck in his rectum. I'm sorry. I can't even imagine that. Was that real? Did he feel pain in that moment? Did he say that?
Good question. Keep in mind, one of the things I stated about the abduction experience is it's remembered after you wake up. Okay? So the idea is, was it real? Did he feel pain? Yes, he can feel pain. He can remember the experience being painful. The people do remember it being painful. It's such a hard thing to explain, this part of it. But let's say I asked you about your birthday, your last birthday. You can remember your last birthday? You think you do. You're remembering a little bit. You're remembering the things that meant the most. That's here, right in the front. That's what you'll tell me about if I ask you to sit down in front of me, tell me about your birthday. Me, through guided questioning and my training that I've done with that, not just as a researcher, investigator, but also as a safety professional, because I do incident investigations. I have to get to a root cause. Okay, so that's the way I question, is to get to that root cause. Why? And if I take you back to that birthday and I sit you down, I let you tell me what you remember, and I'll make note of what I heard, and I'll say, all right, let's do it again. But I'm going to stop you at certain places. I'll ask you questions. Well, what's happening over here? What's happening over there? What was the temperature? What was the ground you were on? Was it solid? Was it soft? Was it carpet? Was it terrazzo? These things, even though you didn't bring it out in the first time, it's recorded because it happened to you. The problem I found out with these experiences is that information that they're given is recorded the same way. It's what was the red flag to this is that areas where there was no information, where when I got them to a certain point in their experience, the entities had you sit on a steel table. Your legs are hanging over. What's the temperature? They couldn't tell me. What's the floor? They couldn't tell me that because that information wasn't given to them. But sitting on the table was as real can be, as real as you and I talking to each other right now. So yes, it's that real. This is the problem with the experience that they're given. It's so real. They come to me and they go, I know what I saw. We hear this so many times. I know what I experienced. I know what I saw. But they don't, because it's that powerful of an experience. But yes, they do feel pain. They remember pain. And that's part of the horror of living with that, is you do remember that. Did it actually happen to them? No. It's something that was given to them as a memory. It's called a false memory.
My question is, what I'm seeing happen out there is not just the UFO, UAP. I'm also seeing other many ways that demons are coming into people's lives. And like through as you mentioned, New Age and other things. Like I'm having an experience with my granddaughter. My oldest granddaughter is actually summoning demons. So my question is, are you seeing more and more demon activity coming in every kind of way you can think of?
Yes. The answer is, so a lot of this, and I think you have a lot of the experience in doing the MUFON reports and having the hundreds and hundreds. So I'm going to give the microphone to him. That's why I was passing it to him immediately. But yeah, when I've done the research and looked into this stuff, there have been everything from Bigfoot to cryptids to, the Slender Man to people see things, and these things are legitimate manifestations. They're not necessarily legitimate humanoid beings, obviously, but they are something to take your mind off of God, and you definitely don't want to open those doors.
And to your question, it's increasing over my 32 years of looking at this. I didn't realize it was going to be this busy 32 years after I started. I never saw that it was coming to this type of head, but it's huge. What we're dealing with now is way more than what I saw 30 years ago. It's come from something that's laughed at and giggled about 20 some years ago to where it's forefront right now. It's in all of us know about it. If we get any news at all, whether it's from the internet, from TV or anywhere, you're going to know about this phenomenon. It's in the news. It's in our life right now.
One of my favorite authors says, fearful sights of a supernatural character will soon be revealed in the heavens through the power of supernatural demons. And this is something that is growing right now in society. And so this is what we're doing and trying to get ahead of it, making sure people know what is actually happening before they go to other places for questions.
When my wife and I traveled, sharing the gospel with people in a variety of different places, whenever we would talk about certain topics, after that topic, people would come up to us and tell us of the experiences they've had, of their loved ones appearing to them. We had a lady with a daughter who was summoning as this lady experienced here. And they would lock all their doors at night and they would deadbolt them. And in the morning, the door would be open and the deadbolt undone and the door would be open. And they would keep closing the door every night, but in the morning, it would be open. And one morning, the door was open and there were all these goat footprints in their kitchen. So it's demonic activity. And what we would tell people who are having having experiences like this is, what's in your house? Do you have any crystals? Do you have any Ouija boards? Do you have any tarot cards? Do you have anything that has any connection to the occult? Because if you do in your home, that's an open door for spiritual phenomena to take place.
Yeah, one thing I want to tie that to is it's interesting because a lot of people, Christians might say, "Oh, come on, can demons tie themselves to physical objects?" Well, didn't they tie themselves to a tree of knowledge of good and evil? God said, "Hey, you can't lead this thing." It's because they can't just float around and harass us at will. That we have to have that choice to allow them into our lives. And so, if you go pick up that thing by Milton Bradley at the Walmart or whatever it is, that Ouija board or anything like that, just because it's made by a toy company doesn't mean it might absolutely bring something into your house.
Just a month ago, I did a whole presentation, Aliens, Angels, in the Afterlife. And in one of my presentations, I tied together angels and the paranormal connection. And we looked at a phenomenon happening on Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. And you'll see at Skinwalker Ranch, they had UFOs, orbs that would appear, but they also would have footprints on their roof. They'd hear voices in other languages from the sky. They would see creatures that were 3 to 4 times their normal size, like a wolf that came and bit down on one of their cattle. And the guy shot that wolf with his hunting rifle at, very close range. And it didn't even faze the thing. During that seminar, we had a lady that I was telling you about who was abducted or had an abduction experience multiple times. And I said, "Have you seen anything else?" And she said, "Oh, yeah. I not only see UFOs, but I've seen Bigfoot. I've seen ghost encounters." You ask, are these demonic apparitions, are we seeing more of it today? I would say we're not only seeing more of it today, but would you guys agree we're seeing more variations of it today? Like, it's coming in 1,000 different forms, but it's all the same stuff coming at us.
I use the analogy sometimes in my talk. These entities, they entice us. They're looking for the one thing that they can get us to accept them. In other words, it's like Jeopardy or one of the game shows that you see on TV where you have 3 doors up there and it said choose from a door. The enemy's saying pick a door, and there's millions of doors. Whatever is one that's going to entice you, the one that's going to seduce you to be part of that realm. But Jesus says, "I stand at the door and knock." So major difference.
Might be a silly question, but the aliens that I've seen on TV and your logos and on your T-shirts, are all looking like this guy here. Is it it came from your past too, 30 years ago. Where does this picture come from? Hollywood?
Yes, that's the Hollywood image that they came up with, the idea of the gray. The descriptions were there with some people. If you've seen the picture on Communion, the book Communion that Whitley Strieber wrote, the New York Times bestseller book, it's similar. Remember, never identical, similar. Also, the ones from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, those were just also similar, same type of concept. But I've got cases that go back into the 60s and the 50s before these beings came out to Hollywood in the 70s that don't resemble these entities at all. It's amazing the transition that's happened through the decades. In the 1950s, there used to be meetings out in the desert in California where all the people that were interested in this stuff used to show up. Outdoor conferences. They'd bring their books that they'd written. Most of them were contactees. It was a meeting of contactees, people that had come in contact with these beings. What did they look like in the 50s? They looked like us. They said they were from our solar system, from planets in our solar system. Once NASA gets our probes out there in the late 60s to other realms, other planets, and we see that they're desolate and you can't live on them, next thing you know, the aliens are no longer humanoid and they're from a star system, no longer our solar system. And then come the 70s and it changes again. The appearance is reptilians, grays, insectoids, images like that. But it's changing again. This one of high spiritual motive, the ones that they're doing the CE5 for, these look angelic, like very like the exquisite, beautiful people. Best of Hollywood, that's what these beings look like. They call them the Nordics or the Pleiadians or names like that. The thing is, they're all the same source. It's adjusting itself to our culture. As our culture changes, it changes. This whole thing is a chameleon. It's there for deception. The purpose is deception. Whatever it takes, they're going to do it to keep that deception going.
You do what talks in the Bible. Are they getting us used to what it talks in the Bible where Christ will come back on this earth? Don't go look for him in the desert. Don't go look for him in the secret rooms. But when he shows up as an angelic angel, people are going to go to that. Are they getting ready to show us stuff like that?
I believe that. Let me just give you another example. I'll go into that real quick. If everyone has probably heard of Aleister Crowley, he's the infamous occultist, and guess what what his demon that he would channel things to him would look like. It looked like this. It looked kind of like an alien grays, which they call this type of big-headed, big-eyed thing. Except his didn't have big eyes; it had little tiny eyes, and so he drew it. And so this thing doesn't exist, but over time it has evolved, morphed into this thing that we recognize and Hollywood has put out. And it is my opinion, I want to make sure I separate fact from opinion here. It is my opinion that they're going to play both sides of this. They're going to appear as beautiful creatures that are here to help us, and there's going to be something terrible that is awful about to happen as well.
What Bradley's describing there is something we saw in the research, even the secular people saw it in the research too, was this idea of good cop, bad cop scenario that they're playing out. Some people have experiences with really nasty looking beings, and then others have these experiences with beautiful, the Pleiadians or the Nordics or whatever they're called. And they're good experiences. But keep in mind, this is that good cop, bad cop. They're still both cops. Okay. Not the cops are bad, but they're playing that scenario where they're just trying to deceive you and they're going to use whatever means possible.
So I've actually got two questions. You mentioned actually the fact that we're seeing more of these events happening now, more demons. I'm just curious from the panel's perspective, do you see any relationship there to CERN?
I don't have an answer for that one as far as whether it's an increase or not. I think there's something other going on there, another type of of the deception dealing with CERN. We do know that. We see it. But I don't know if there's the only connection I would say that there is between the two is that the issues are coming from the same source. It's a different deception for the different person, the stuff that people are dealing with CERN.
Okay. Second question was you mentioned, Joe, that they have the ability to put thoughts in our minds. And for anybody who's done the research, there's been patents out there, I think since the 70s, where they can, we can do that. Microwave transmissions can actually do that now. And they even, I think the CIA's admitted to that. Is that just a psyop for us to kind of put off the fact that it could be coming from demons, or?
So I've seen a lot of these patents, and there's patents for your classic UFO, and there's all kinds of stuff that people have put out there. Sometimes it's legit. Sometimes it's just someone trying to make money off of what could happen. In other words, you have a patent out there, so now this was my idea first, and if someone comes out with it, well, then I can sue you. And so they might not actually have that technology yet, but they've patented the idea. And so a lot of people trip up on this and say, well, look, we have the technology already. Well, not necessarily. It might just be someone trying to make money off of it. But, and then again, we do know that the government does have, secret things that they're working on. So we don't know all the details in this, and I can't say I know all the details. So that's all I have to say about it.
Okay, I was just going to say that these entities have been around forever, and I brought up a picture from Michelangelo. I don't know if you know about it, and it's called the Madonna, I think, in Child. Yeah, it is, and there's a UFO in the background. So that's number one. So they've always been around. I think that in those days they were very superstitious anyway. And they just, they just didn't realize that they were demons, but, they just looked at them and went, ooh and ah. But what I was my real question is that in the Bible, it says that Lucifer, he's the Lord of the airwaves. And now we have television, we have radio, all of those things go through the air. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing more of this. I mean, you can look at something on television that's demonic, and I think you're bringing that energy into your house. What do you think about that?
You made a good point about Satan being the prince and power of the air. We have airways that are being interjected with, like you said, TV, radio waves, everything that we're putting out there into our atmosphere. You know what else reaches into the atmosphere? Prayer. I think if we had a lot more of that going up, I think it would cause a little more interference in the enemy.
Yeah, just like any medium. I mean, I'm using the word medium for everything from this occult to what we use today. You can have good things and bad things in it, and what you put in prayer or what you put in bad things as well. You can put chemicals in the air. I'm not saying anything in the air is I don't want to go into the idea, because I don't personally believe in a lot of conspiracies. I don't know if you know that, but I do believe what the Bible says. And I think that when you put something up in the sky, I mean, let me say it this way. Satan exists and seems to not have the ability to, or have some kind of a way naturally not to be able to be affected by the physics on earth here. And so God calls him the prince of the air for now. God's coming back though, and he's not going to have his abilities for long. And so keep that prayer in the air.
Some of the things that our brother Joe here mentioned, he'll use anything, and it's different for different individuals, different people. So some of them are more for a secular audience or scientific audience that may not necessarily believe in God. And then there's some that are more attached to a Christian worldview. So over in Europe in 1917, we have apparitions of Mary appearing all over the world. And one of them was in Spain, where there were several little children that were being talked to by supposedly an apparition of Mary. And when these little children would see Mary, there was always this really bright, glowing orb or ball with her. And one time, one of the children asked, "What is this? What is this orb? What is this ball with you?" And the answer came back, "That's how I got here." And so it ties Christian as well as UFO type things together. And just recently, we're having this on the White House website, whitehouse.gov. What's this? Around the 1st of November. 1st of November is All Saints Day, the Catholic holiday. And on the website of the White House, there was a statement about Mary and about All Saints Day and about how Christians celebrate this day, and that Mary is now the patroness of the United States of America. So the closeness of these apparitions, again, the devil is just using a variety of different ways to appeal to different sections of society. But as Joe is saying, it's all the same program.
Yeah, I had never heard that thing about Mary. I'd like to compare sources because I had to have heard that same thing from the cult where they have said this is our ancient vehicle. But I don't put that out on the channel because I can't say for a fact what a demonic deceiving spirit says as what I believe, right? You have to go with what the Bible says because that's going to be true. But it is interesting, and I'll just say this is fascinating to me that all these Catholic paintings all have a giant glowing orb behind their head, thinking that it's a halo. When Chris Bledsoe saw his apparition that said, "We want you to present us to the world," guess what was behind the head? That giant fireball. And so it makes you wonder if all these paintings. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's interesting, and we'll see how this progresses as time moves on.
I was curious, how many of your abduction victims have physical markings on their bodies besides maybe 3 scratch type of things. About 5 years ago, my son woke up and he had almost like a grid type suction mark on his back, and we couldn't find anything in our house or in our life that resembled that mark. So I was just curious if you have any reports of weird markings other than scratches.
Yeah, lots of different types of marks. But we got to look at this honestly, though, how this affects people. This is something I learned. I first got involved with the idea of marks and implants in the early part of my research. These entities can leave marks. Yes, we do know that. But there can also be marks that are recognized on the body that didn't come from them. It's just we don't remember where we got them from. I got to give you a little story here to kind of explain that. And this is basically when I was looking into the idea of what people talk about as alien implants. Are they actually having items put in the body for tracking or whatever? So I took an honest look at that. At the same time, I was working at a major boat company. I did 24 years with Sea Ray boats down in Florida. And one day I happened to run my hand across a countertop that was laminated with fiberglass, and there was a loose fiber hair that went in my finger at this point and was poking out the other side. Didn't break the skin on the other side, but I could take it, move it back and forth. And I thought, that's not good. Went to my boss and I said, "Hey, can you pull this out?" He says, "No, I can't do that. Fiberglass is barbed. It'll break off and it'll leave it in there." And then we got a bigger problem. I said, "So how do I fix this?" He says, "Well, I'm signing you out to go to the treatment center right now." So they sent me to the treatment center and they said the same thing. They said, "We need to send you to the hospital and we're going to get that removed this afternoon." So I went in for emergency surgery on this little finger right here and to pull that barb out. Surgery went fine, got the barb taken out. And then Doctor said, the first time I seen the doctor was at the hospital, not in his office. And he says, I'm going to make an appointment for 2 weeks. You come back and take the stitches out of your finger, make sure it's good, and you'll be good to go. It's okay. So 2 weeks later, I go back to the doctor's office. I go into his office. He's busy at the time, looking at, I'm across from his desk. He's on the other side. He's got his back to me doing something on a shelf. And I noticed this picture on the wall. And I said, can I ask you a question? He says, sure. I said, that picture you got there, it was about 3 feet wide, 2 feet high, and it was shadow box made, just like a shadow box. And what was in there was not really a picture. It was a matted surface with all these items stuck on it with little labels on it, given the date. And I said, what is that? And he turned and looked and he says, oh, that's my collection. I said, collection of what? He says, these are things like I pulled out of you when I do surgeries like this, that people get things in their body and they want it removed. And these are a lot of the things that I've removed from people's bodies. Now the investigator mind starts creeping in, and I go, can I ask you another question? He says, sure. I says, how many of those people realized where it came from? He says, pretty much none. The enemy knows everything about you. They've been around since the beginning of time. They know when you got stuck in the arm with that little whatever when you were a kid. You didn't pay attention. You just went ouch and ran off and continued playing. All those years went by. You forgot all about it. But now you're an abduction experiencer. The enemy knows that's in there. The enemy is going to make you believe to think it's an implant. It's not. It's just a piece of garbage that got stuck in your body, and now they're using it against you to think that they did that. So they can use it as control. Every single of the researchers that I've been in contact with over the years that have collected these items taken out of people's body, if you look at them, they look exactly like the stuff I saw in that doctor's picture. Garbage. That's all they were. There's nothing there saying that this is high technology at all. It's just more of the deception. Keep in mind, if this is what we believe is part of the strong delusion that God himself will send, then it's going to be one amazing delusion. Amazingly complicated, amazingly deep, amazingly faceted. And that's what we're seeing. It's got to be that way to serve its purpose. It's testing the faith of humanity. That's what the delusion is for. Are you with this lie or are you with me, Jesus Christ? So they use all of this against us. And that's kind of where the marks come from the same way. That mark could have been something he picked up. You just never identified where it came from. But the enemy's going to get you to question it. And that's how they work.
Can you talk about AI? Do you know? And also Alexa?
This is my wife. I had the exact same thought, but she asked a question, and you brought up points of contact with the occult, Ouija boards and the like. The way I see AI, especially with what's coming down the road now where you can talk to Jesus on AI is an electronic web-based Ouija board that the enemy can use and manipulate against what we believe from Scripture as truth.
If you allow it.
Pardon me?
If you allow it.
If you allow it.
I think the ability to use AI is going to be tremendous for us in progress. But it, like anything else that's out there, it can be used for devious things, devious purposes. But in itself, I don't believe that AI is demonic. I believe that it can be tapped into by the demonic if we allow the demonic to do that. Remember, they're trying, this deception is coming from God. The strong delusion is God. Okay, he's allowing them to perpetrate the delusion, but they're bound by rules. I believe, and I've talked to Bradley about this, I think what we're seeing here is the identical story of Job. Remember, Satan wanted to test Job's faith, but he was limited on what he could do to Job. And I see the same thing with this phenomenon. These beings, they're pretty nasty and they're tricky and they're deceptive, but they're limited on what they can do to us. They're not here to kill us, but they will drive you crazy enough that you want to kill yourself. Their purpose is to deceive us into doubting God, turning our eyes away from him. That's what Satan wants, to say, look, they didn't believe you.
There's an old adage and a truism that, we know that the father of lies, plural, the lies are not so much to get us to believe in the lies, but to so obfuscate the truth and to confuse people that you're susceptible to anything that comes along that looks real.
Sure. I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree with Joe. I don't think I graduated with a computer science background. I understand how AI works. I've built some systems, some LLMs, some large language models, as they call them. And so I understand what they're doing with it. But like anything, it can be manipulated by spiritualism, but only if, you're dabbling in things that can do that. It will, AI is incredible, but the biggest problem with AI, from what I can see from a Christian perspective, is what it's going to do with society and the economy very soon. It's going to push, and I'm not going too deep into this because this is a whole nother topic, but Pope Leo the 13th dealt with something in the economy at his time. Pope Leo the 14th said he took his name because he sees AI being the new industrial revolution. What's happening here? When the economy dips because of what's happening, when people lose their jobs, people are going to wonder, why can't I work 24/7? That's going to be a big deal. That's what I see. That's where I see this AI stuff going. And this Pope will step in. He'll say, well, we have to do something about this. So could that be a big deal? Yeah. That's my personal opinion. That's where I see this happening, and I think I can back it up. But AI itself isn't a demon in a box, but I definitely think it's pretty amazing.
I've been playing around with the AI, and the one thing I found out about it, dealing with it myself, is, we're not designed to deal with it right away. It's coming at us fast, because one of the effects it did on me is I was using it heavy, and it all of a sudden I got this feeling of guilt. Am I making it work too hard? Am I treating it bad? And I wondered, how do I respond to it? Do I say thank you? Do I say please? Are these things we should be doing? These are questions I had, but it's so lifelike. It learns so much about you personally as you use it, that it starts judging ahead of you. It'll ask you questions that you should have asked. You should have. You just forgot to, but it did, because it knows you now. And it's a strange concept to deal with, and people are going to have to get used to that part too, and not let it overtake them. I mean, I had to step back and I go, what am I thinking? Am I making it work too hard? If I was using a person for what I was using AI for, I would feel guilty for working them too hard and not paying them. But AI, we don't pay them, and we work them to death. And of course, my natural instinct was, I must be mistreating it. But there's nothing to mistreat. It's not a person. It's just data.
Okay, I had two things. First, I forgot to mention in my testimony that when I had the experience, that it immediately stopped in the name of Jesus. So that's one thing for our weapons of warfare is the word, worship, and fasting. And then secondly, I had the question that Bradley, you brought up earlier. What is CE5 or CE6 and CE7? Because I've only heard up to 5.
Let me answer that last one first, because I have a goldfish memory. What is AI? Oh, I actually had a website already pulled up showing it, but so actually Joe told me this first. I hadn't heard it, but I asked him a long time ago. I said, "What is past CE5?" And there is something past CE5, and but there's CE7, CE5, and CE6 and CE7 are a little out there, for lack of a better word. And I lost it right now, but I know what it is. It's CE6 is the idea that these things can kill humanity. And it's beyond, talking to them, beyond contact. It's where something dies. In other words, when they are at Skinwalker Ranch, we talked about Skinwalker Ranch for a minute. The person that sold Skinwalker Ranch to the government contractor, I forget their all names, but essentially he sold it, and he said this. I said this in one of my episodes. I showed the video. He said, I sold it because I had two wonderful dogs, and these dogs escaped chasing one of these fireballs on Skinwalker Ranch. For those that don't know what Skinwalker Ranch is, it's a spiritualism that happens around this big farm out in the middle of a place that's surrounded by Indian reservation paganism. Yeah, in Utah. Yeah, and so these two dogs took off, and they said after they went through the woods, you couldn't see them anymore, and all you heard was yelp. And they came back tomorrow morning, in the morning, and all you saw was two burnt spots with oily stuff on the ground. The dogs had been killed. And that would be an example of CE6, I believe.
But Brad, it's not just the dogs on that ranch. He also encountered cattle mutilations on that ranch. Weird stuff where, he was tagging one of the calves. He goes around the barn to go pick up something. He comes back to where the calf was, and the calf is dead on the ground. There's no blood anywhere. All of its organs are missing.
Yeah, we don't know all the details and everything that happens here. It's very weird. And there's a lot of, like you said, that could this be demonic? Maybe. But could it be also that that disinformation has been placed in here to make people sound crazy? I think that could happen too. So I don't rule anything out unless I have actual facts about it. But I try to be very pragmatic about this because it's really difficult to figure out what's right and what's wrong unless you're looking directly at the Bible. And the Bible's not going to tell you about Skinwalker Ranch. But what I think is important, though, is that, I was answering the question about CE5, CE6. That's CE6. CE7 is the idea, according to the internet, that angels, well, I call them angels. People think they're ET. ET can have intercourse with humanity, and you can have hybrids. We don't believe that. So, but they call that CE7 because there's a lot of, even in Christianity, there's a lot of this idea that you can have these hybrid ideas out there. And I can go deep into that study, but only if you guys want to.
Thank you.
My question is about the E1 comet that is supposed to be coming. There's questions as to, is it really a comet? Is it some kind of an UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it? What is it really? And what do you think about Project Bluebeam?
Are you talking about something beyond 3i Atlas, or are you talking about 3i Atlas? That one, okay. So 3i Atlas is an interstellar comet they found with the new satellite that they have out there watching everything. And it's funny because there's actually been two others. That's why it's called 3i, because there's been Interstellar 1, which was, I think, a Oumuamua. And then there was a second one, which wasn't well known because it just looked like a comet. And then there's this one that has some weird characteristics about it. Personally, I believe it's going to be a comet and it's going to pass us. I think what we see in the Bible is that these things start to happen as disasters come upon the earth. And then these things, because what we see right now, without looking at the Bible, looking at the experiences, a lot of times you start to see spiritualism appear when traumatic things happen to people. When someone, like, for instance, when Chris Bledsoe lost his job, he called out to the universe and this thing appeared. And he had said over and over in his testimony, he says, as I hear different testimonies like mine, these things appear when bad things happen on earth. And so we know as Christians that there's going to be apocalyptic things that are going to happen at the end of time. And so could this be the preparation for that event? I think that's what's going to happen. But I have a feeling you have a Bible verse.
Yes, I just wanted to read Luke 21:10, where Jesus talks in Luke chapter 21 about things that are going to appear just before he comes again. Then said he unto them, Jesus is speaking, nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And of course, have seen that over the course of time, and we're seeing it now. There's a lot of saber rattling. The next thing is, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilences. So there's all the natural disasters, the earthquakes, the famines, the pestilences, etc. But then the next thing is, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven. So there's now the aerial phenomena. So we've got wars and rumors of wars, then natural disasters, and then we see the phenomena that we're seeing in the heavens. So we're having natural disasters, we're having wars and rumors of wars, and this is kind of the next thing, the signs and that are happening. Fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven.